we're live. I love Monday nights. I'm such a, what am I? I'm like a Monday night, like, I get so emotional on Monday nights when I see Rose again. You know, Rose and I have never met. Someday I'm gonna have to hug you so tight, Rose. So good evening.
We meet every week. What are you talking about?
I know.
It's just not physical.
You're right.
These are safe hugs.
Good morning, good afternoon. This is TMS Roundtable Global. My name is Dr. Tova Goldfein, and every Monday night we join together with a wonderful guest, health professional, doctor, film director, film producer, filmmaker, coaching. So blessed to meet so many amazing people helping others to heal themselves. And that's the beauty of the human body and the human mind that are intimately connected. So I'm going to hand it off to Rose Hoye, my co-host and professional partner from Australia. It's summertime. We were talking about our skins. I'm pale and she's all rosy because I'm freezing and she's in the summer. Good morning.
Right. 31 degrees today. Yes. Celsius, not Fahrenheit.
Right.
Today we've got Gail Kirschenbaum. Now, Gail has been our guest in the past, and she talks about forgiveness. Now, it's not just forgiveness that she's talking about, but it's freeing ourselves up to actually be present to that other person that has hurt us. Now, if you reflect back on people with chronic pain, their childhood is often a bit fractured. You know, maybe an alcoholic father, an anxious mother, moving schools, all sorts of various things in childhood. You know, you might say you had a happy childhood, but in a way, there may have been these terrifying moments, a bully in the classroom or whatever. But the problem was you weren't safe to tell any adult that this was happening. Now, this is the story of Gail in many ways. And she's going to talk to us about how she got to that stage of, you know, as I was reflecting on Gail speaking, I was thinking about truth and reconciliation. And that's where she's coming from, not in a global manner, but in an intimate manner within a family. So releasing that sense of resentment and hurt and actually going forward. So please, Gail, tell us a little bit about your background and just welcome. And Gail is now also coaching. She also has a program which is about helping other people transition into that journey so that they can actually have that sense of freedom. That sense of freedom brings relief from chronic pain. And sometimes we're locked up by ourselves, unfortunately. We don't realize that the prison door is open because we can't actually see it for the sense of fear. So thank you, Gail. And please share with us about your nose. I love it. I love it. I
forgot about the nose.
I often tell people, please watch this movie because no matter what sort of a mother you are, you've done a bit of it. No matter what sort of a child you are, you've received it. So please go ahead.
Okay. Well, thank you. And it's great to be back with both of you, with Rose and Tova. It's fantastic. So, you know, I didn't expect to become a forgiveness coach. I didn't go to study mental health, though I think a lot of people who had challenging childhoods, when we go off to college, we do consider psychology as a degree. But I was always born very artistic. So I went into the, art department, and then I, became a creative. So essentially, my story is probably very similar to a lot of people's stories, which is in a movie now. I was the youngest of three, the only daughter, and my mother thought she's giving birth to Gary. She had two boys, and she got Gail. And so, most people would think, well, she won the lottery. After two boys, she got a girl, but not my mother. And I just found out not that many years ago that she got sick emotionally. My father had to take her away. Of course, she denies it, but I found out the facts. So, yes, so all hell broke loose, I think, the minute she saw my genitalia. And it was...
Cut it off! Get rid of it!
Yeah, right. You're right. So essentially, probably in her eyes, competition arrived. She's is a narcissist, and and son, does much better around men and likes their attention. So very early on, things were not good. And I never knew what I would do that would trigger her rage. And so I was constantly in this state of fight or flight, because her rage was pretty intense. And there I am watching her love and adore my brothers. And I have all this I'm born in the 50s. I have all this 8mm footage, because literally when my father got the camera, my mother's pregnant. This is in footage with me. And the next shot of footage is I'm in her arms. So if you watch my film, Look at Us Now, Mother, and you see that archival footage, you can even, people have said, oh my God, they see how I'm being yanked and I'm just an infant, she's feeding me, I'm a toddler and she's moving me. So, and abruptly, not with love, right? Because we all know love heals. So, so it had tremendous effect on my physical condition, since we're talking about the connection between the mind and the body, because I was always in this state of fight or flight, and I lived in this constant state of fear of her. It manifested itself physically. So I always had headaches, and that led to dizzy spells and nausea. I was throwing up and everything would be spinning. I just remember having to lie down and everything would be spinning, and just close my eyes and hope it would stop. And in fact, I remember carpooling to Hebrew school in 7th grade and telling the other kids in the carpool that I had a headache, and they all went, "What's that?" And I thought everybody had headaches. So what happened was, and I was born a very sensitive person. So usually people who are very sensitive, so within a family, we can have the same parents and have totally different childhoods. And we know that. So how a parent is to one child is not how they're going to be to another. And we also know that affects our sibling relationship, because in my family, my brothers were loved and adored, and they became my mother's bouncers. So you hold her, you put her on the refrigerator, you hold her. I have to get in, break down the door, get into her room. So they literally work for her. So that kind of bullying continued. Became a doctor.
Actually, Gail, tell them about being put on the refrigerator.
Yeah, I mean, that was just one of many things, Yeah, this is all in the film. And my mother, in a therapy session, does admit it. Yeah, no, my mother, again, to get me out of the way, she had my brother put me on the refrigerator. I was just a little kid, so it was pretty high and I couldn't come down. And that,
oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, that was just one of so many things. It was that was nothing compared to other things, to tell you the truth. But what it did to me is, I'm talking about the sibling relationship. So my brothers were not raised to love me. So that never happened. So as I talk about the sibling relationships, how a parent treats one child as compared to another. So even though one brother became a doctor, one became a lawyer, these are smart, accomplished people, I had no relationship with them, and the bullying continued through life. So what happened was, I ended up leaving home very young. At the end of my 16th year, a social worker said, you have to get out. So I managed to get out of high school young, and I got into university young, showed my art portfolio. And the good news is I was 200. So the key was to not live with my abuser. So I went away to university. It was 200 miles away. So I wasn't coming home every night, and living with that and being on edge. And this is the hippie days. So I was among, I was in the art department. I was in the fine arts building. I was finally around like-minded people. I found community. And that was so healing, because one of my steps, because I teach forgiveness and I have several steps to finding it. And one is create distance. So I was able to do that. Anyway, and I finished college pretty young at 20. And then, just to cut to the chase, I ended up, eventually always in the creative field. I ended up in entertainment in LA, and I started having a lot of career success, and won Emmys and whatever, and was all over the media, New York Times and the Today Show. And it would be crazy, because there was my accomplishments and I was being acknowledged in the industry for it. And then I'd go home and I would be the same person that I was. It's scapegoat was on my head. Victim was right over here. And the bullying continued. And I dreaded it. And suddenly I was either carrying, but at this point I was giving it back. I was just unleashing back the anger, the word that you use, resentment. I was just so filled with this. And I was like back to enemy territory, you know, and so it was like I had these two lives. And then I realized, oh my God, if I don't learn how to forgive my mother, I am never going to get over this. I'm going to live my life with this resentment. I do need to stop for a minute because we do talk about the connection of pain and our mental health. When I did leave my house, which as I explained was very young, I no longer had the headaches. I mean, all that dizzy spell, all that stuff stopped because I was coming into my own and I wasn't living with my abuser. But I was filled with rage and I was filled with anger, and it was always seething. And believe me, it's not like I'm anger free and resentment free. You know, it's not like it's just.
I think the point we have to make to our listeners is that you were expressing yourself through your art, through your film, through your photography,
yes,
through your dog, a relationship with your dog that was so healthy. And therefore, I don't think it turned into chronic pain. I think you had emotions, but you were moving them through. And so you didn't come out with, thank God, any chronic pain that left you going down other roads, but you're now talking about your feelings, which is important.
Yeah. So what I want to say is, and actually I'm so happy you said that, because it's so important to express yourself. And that's the other thing. A lot of people keep stuff in. And so when we keep it in, that shame turns to pain, and that turns to disease. So I always say you need support and community, because we're not alone. Everybody has a story, and we need to find our community, find our support, and express it. And yes, I had a dog for many years. I made a movie with her that is on Amazon Prime now, but it was on HBO, and it was a mutual rescue. She really taught me how to love. So what I was missing in my childhood. So a lot of people say when I get up and speak in front of audiences, particularly after they see my movie, and then, you know, everybody, the floodgates open, you know, my movie is, you know, as Oprah says, very authentic, and it's not a vanity piece. You see all sides of me, because I made it with one thing in mind, and that is to help people. And obviously, thank God that it's doing it. Oh, I lost my train of thought.
We're holding the space for you. Go ahead.
Okay. So,
it wasn't vain. You weren't vain. It was all the emotions.
And the dog, who was very healing. Oh, so my childhood, right. So people would say to me, oh my God, you seem so confident after, look at what you've been through. You know, you didn't have any ally in your family. There's no love. And the good news is that I realized that I wasn't doing anything wrong, even though, you know, my mother ripped me apart from head to toe, my brothers joined. So that's why I have a funny movie called My Nose, about her trying to get me to have a nose job. And no, I didn't have one. And
fabulous.
Oh, thank you.
Fabulous.
My hair, you know, this is, by the way, how's the hair? I was being ridiculed for my hair. She was having it straightened, you know, since I was in 3rd grade. So, you know, it's so funny because everything's stereotypical Jewish. She wanted to get rid of. When I was on the Today Show, the NBC Today Show, the first thing she said to me is, you sound too Jewish. You should go to elocution class. It's like, well, I am Jewish, mother. But the good news is that I didn't want the nose job. I was okay with my hair. Like all the, you know, you had a fat neck, a fat. The funny thing is, I'm like 116 pounds now, and they all grew bigger than, you know, but they ridiculed me from head to toe, and she led the way. So, but what I was lacking is love. I had no love. And, you know, I would say one of my long-lasting scars is I am single. You know, I'm not a spring chicken. I did not marry. I didn't have children. I did have 3 miscarriages along the way. They were not planned. But, you know, I think that's an area I'm still working on. You know, I certainly have had my relationships, but I think at age 12, I said, I'm never going to let anybody hurt me like that again. Yeah. So I put up that wall, But back to the resentment. So my big thing, my big light bulb moment, and my accidental path to help people is forgiveness. And I have a method and my steps to do it. It's organic. It's what I've done, you know, and what I apply to anybody who's difficult. And we have to apply it to ourselves too, because we're not always, you know, when we feel the love, women, ladies, as you know, when we feel the love, we are giving the love, right? But
Yes.
we're not feeling the love. That's when we get snappy and we jump on people. So, yes. So yeah, I can go in, you know, I don't want to, I obviously have the gift of gab here. So,
No, you're doing well. Keep going.
keep going. Okay. Because I do want to talk about, you know, how I did it. And obviously it's what I teach. I just taught at Omega, and I've got a full day in-depth workshop coming up very soon. So in my TED Talk, you know, I got invited, due to the film, a lot of things happened to my life that I didn't expect. I got invited to do one of these, it's called the TEDx. It's called No More Drama with Mama. And
was
Isn't that the
lovely.
movie? Isn't that the movie? The movie's called
No, it's a TED Talk. Tova, can you write that
Yes,
up on our
yes.
site?
Yeah.
It's so good. And that's how, Gail, that's how I found you, you know.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I think now I remember, right. Yeah, you know, I have to tell you, I wish I came up with that name when I was making the movie, because it just kind of has a nice rhyme to it. But the movie's called Look at Us Now, Mother. And I always say, you know, watch that movie first, because it is so, you are with me on my journey. And you want to hear something? I just got an email from a woman who watched it when it was on Netflix. She watched it again. She said, oh, I didn't remember this, and I saw that. Because this is what happens when people watch the movie. They get to a certain point, and think about, you know, when we watch something and something triggers something in their life, and now they leave the movie and they're thinking about something in their life, and then they come back. So when they see it, I have had people who have seen it 10 times. You have no idea how many people are telling me this. So then they go back to the movie and watch it again. There's suddenly that scene that triggered them into their own life, and then they're, you know, continue. So yeah, if you could, the movie's Look at Us Now, Mother. And if you can go back and see, you know, see that. But anyway, so I did the TED Talk, which is, I focus on 3 of my steps. I have 7, but I'm just going to focus here. So one of the main things, I want to go back for a minute, and please interrupt me because I don't want to hog the time here.
Okay.
No, you're doing well.
Yeah.
Just keep going.
You're on a roll.
Remember, Gail, all of this pertains to all of us.
Yeah.
So,
Right. Yes.
Just keep going, because this is what we want in this broadcast.
Right.
We want people to be able to chew it over and see what can come up for them.
I get an opportunity to keep repeating that love is physical and chemical, and forgiveness and compassion is a physical reaction in the body.
Right.
So it's an incredibly important.
I'm going to show something.
Even forgive us, and I always say to people, you know, even when you were talking about anyway, it'll come up again. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to go through the main steps, but I want to mention one thing, because we're connecting our emotional state with our physical state, and they are so linked together. Okay. When I was working on the movie, as a creative, I've been keeping diaries my entire life. And also because I always draw, there's drawings in these little journal books. So when I was working on the movie, I found that carton. It took me 3 months. I thought it might have, you know, vanished. And I sat down and I reread it and I relived it. Now, at that same time, I did not make the connection. I have a skin thing where when I was little and I was growing up, you know, my mother's like this fashion plate. And so she would put me in, and I was like her doll to dress up. So she would put me in these organdy dresses, and I'd get welts, like giant rashes and welts wherever it was touching me everywhere. But it didn't matter to her, because what mattered is that I look good, you know, because, you know, a daughter is a reflection of the mother, right? So, so all my allergies and things come out through my skin. So that's number 1. So while I was working on the film, my hands, the skin on my fingers just started getting really dry and chapped. So first I'm thinking, okay, I just have dry skin. It's the winter here in New York. Oh, maybe I'm allergic. I got new auto cases for my cell phone and everything. So, of course, I run to the doctor. And first they test me and they go, it's eczema. They give me the prednisone and it helps a little. But once I'm off it, skin comes back. And it got progressively worse. Where my hands, can I show this to you?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I don't know if you're going to, can you see that?
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. Broken skin. Yeah.
So it was thick with plaque.
Cracked. Yeah.
And cracked and plaque, thick and bleeding. And so our hands are in everything. It was excruciating. So I wore vinyl gloves. Remember when the COVID started, we couldn't find masks or gloves? I had my boxes. So I had no fingerprints.
This is why you were making the movie. The symptoms came back, especially to your skin.
I never had it in my hands. Okay. I never actually had that. I had welts from fabric and whatever.
Sure, but as an adult then, you got the skin condition in a different space.
After I reread my diaries, I did not make that connection. So for 4 years, I ran to Western doctors. Here I am in New York. We have great doctors, head of dermatology, this hospital, that hospital. I even ran down to Chinatown and found a Chinese herbalist. I was boiling herbs, putting my hands over I would have done a dance up and down. I was alone. And I got known for my hands.
But did you think, this is the point, because I know that you saw this on the movie when you met Michael, and it really took you that much closer to what you were doing, because you knew it, but what were you thinking in your mind? I'm stressed.
I did not make the connection right away. Okay.
No, she saw it as the winter time in New York and the cold. And,
I did. And people were going, did you use new soap? It's your hands and whatever. So then I'm 4 years into this and I'm thinking, you know, I didn't have an intimate relationship. If I have one, when I have one next, how am I going to touch anyone? You know, I couldn't even I had to get some kind of passport and I had no fingerprints. So long and short of it is, and also all my, I have friends all over the world and people are shipping me cream. I have it, Gail. I met someone who has the same problem and I had a collection of ointments and creams, the magic potion, and nothing did anything. Wow. So 4 years into this, I used to live in LA when I produced television, and I had a fantastic doctor, Dr. Wells. He's a chiropractor / acupuncturist. I emailed him the pictures of my hands, and I said, can you help me? I will fly out there. And he emails me back going, you need love. And I said, beautiful. And I emailed back, I said, yeah, I know, but I'm alone now. And then he emails me back, what about your dog? And I email him back, she died. It was his third email to me that my light bulb went off. He says, you need to trick yourself. And as soon as he said, I need to trick myself, I then knew that I created it. I then knew that this was my trauma from reliving, because honestly, during that period of time, I was a pincushion. I had to wear sunglasses at night when I went out. I'd see a homeless person, I'd feel their pain. They would come to me. So I relived all my pain. And very interestingly, the skin, so I had to shed it, and hands, we hold on to things. So I actually learned about energy healing. I learned about tapping, EFT, emotional freedom technique. I just read up on Gary. I got his book and watched the videos. I found this Qigong master. All I did was get the tapes and listen to it, Master Chun Li. And every day, twice a day, I did my own thing, meditation, tapping, and listening to Qigong. And then the skin within a month came back after 4 years. And I always say I have nude fingers because when I get stressed, it starts and I start tapping away and do my whole thing. So you know what was so amazing is to realize how powerful we are. We can get ourselves sick and we can heal ourselves.
And it's a strong person. I always say, look how strong you are.
That you can be so hard on yourself.
And to get to have your body create that's the strength of your character.
Right. Yes, very painful.
Of the characteristic of your trust and strength and sensitivity using against you or for you.
Right. So it's very actually empowering to realize, A, we can get ourselves sick, and B, we can heal ourselves. So that, because as I said, I stopped at the point they wanted to put me on Humira. You know, the commercials go on forever about all the things. And I said, no. In fact, the Chinese herbalist said to me, you can live without your hands, but you can't live without your organs. And I was like, don't worry, I wouldn't even consider it. But so I am so blessed, because I always say whenever we have an obstacle, look at it as an opportunity to learn. So had I not gone through that, I would have never learned these techniques. Now, Beautiful. If you need a glass of water or a break, I want to go into forgiveness. I want to go into my journey of.
I just want to answer a few. I just want to share. A few people are just checking in with. I just want to welcome them and put up their questions. I always, Johnny always joins us. He works in the middle of the day. I think he's in California or something. He's always checking in with our show, and he says, "Oh crap, the mom issues. I need to watch this." And Johnny's relentless about healing. It's a journey for him. I want to say hello to Jeannie. Jeannie's been on our show. She's an amazing healing coach in somewhere in California. She also grew up with a Jewish mother and Jewish parents, and she's managing really well. She's doing great. Hi, Jeannie. I'm so happy that you're here. And Rachel's going to be on our show next week. Rachel's amazing. She's healed herself from migraine headaches with the help of Jeannie and other people. My Jewish mother has in the past said I could get a nose job. I think I saw that trailer. I remember personally crying in a dressing room with my mom because she made me buy a dress. I have very few memories, but there I am in the dressing room crying because she wouldn't let me not take the dress. So I was crying, and I was an only daughter also with brothers. So I hear you. I hear you. Lori, I love seeing you on here. Lori's also become a healer. She's amazing, healed herself with lots of TMS things. Lori Ryder, she also plays guitar, which is very healing music. And Valerie shared something. I remember Valerie, we've worked with Valerie, and she's gotten over some amazingly difficult trauma with her mom and dad. And she writes that her father always wanted a girl, and she was his second girl. And she heard over and over that she was stupid because she was born a girl, and the resentment. And, I don't think parents, again, this is something parents do this. They don't realize the effect of what they have. So thank you for sharing that, Valerie. Thank you very much. Rachel asked the kind of doctor in California. I said he was a chiropractor and an acupuncturist.
Yeah, he's in the San Fernando Valley. His name is Dr. Dr. Wells, a good name for a doctor.
And Patty, love when Patty comes to visit us. What Qigong teacher did you listen to?
Master Chun-Li Lin. Chun-Li Lin.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And
his company's called, I think it's Spring Forest. So you put his name.
Oh yes, I've watched that. It's just lovely, isn't it?
Very good. Yeah.
Well, I just want to say something about movement and Qigong, and I mean this movie Love Heals, which I've been promoting a lot on TMS Roundtable, and it's coming. It'll come back again in a few weeks for people to watch. It's all about movement. It's about tapping. It's about moving. It's about moving your feelings. Motion is such a key here, and what do we do when we're in pain? We stop. So it's an interesting connection.
Tova, the movement there's two different types of movement, and one of the movements with Qigong is it's so slow, and it's sort of like from the earth up. And remember, we had the Korean guy. What is it? Fire.
On the hands.
No, the fire. Water, ice and fire, or it's on Love Heals. But that whole idea.
Fire up, water down.
Yeah, something like that.
Fire up, water down. This is all, again, nothing new under the sun. It's fascinating what we're learning. And from years and years, we're just giving it a different expression, and we're trying to reach people, you know, with this work. So,
right. Okay, let's get back to forgiveness. We're running out of time. Come on.
I want to delve into forgiveness because I feel like it's the most important thing we need to learn. I feel like it's the biggest gift I gave myself. And if you can learn how to do it, it's the biggest gift you can give yourself, because we all know hanging on to that anger and resentment only hurts one person. It hurts ourselves. So I also want to just deal for 1 minute with the word forgive, because there's a lot of energy in the word forgive. And a lot of people think forgive means, well, you're going to forget. Forgive means you condone the behavior, and forgive means you have to reconcile. It doesn't mean any of those things. We will never forget. We're not condoning the behavior, and we don't have to reconcile. I reconciled, but it's not necessary. Okay. And I need people to be aware of that. So I'm going to just go into one major thing that was a light bulb moment. And that was a number of years ago when I lived in Los Angeles. I met a woman, a French woman. She had a horrific childhood. And in her healing, she became a facilitator of a forgiveness game. It was a board game that you throw the dice, you move your piece, and wherever you land, that's when you do whatever it tells you to do. And at this point, I had dug up things about my mother's past. Every time I asked about her childhood, she would always say, I don't know, I don't remember. In fact, in my film, Look at Us Now, Mother, you can, you know, she said it so many times, I edited a very funny sequence together. So that led me to research. I dug up genealogy records. I found family members that were still alive, and I interviewed them. So I found newspaper clippings. So I pieced together her tragic childhood that was kept a secret. There are many things that happened in her childhood. You know, her father tried to kill himself twice. She found him one of the times. It was during the Depression. Anyway, so back to the board games. When I landed at this spot, she says, stand up and close your eyes. And she said, okay, imagine your mother as a little girl. And at that point, I saw a wounded little girl, because I had dug into her past. And so I didn't see a mean mother who always criticized me and abused me and blah, blah, blah. I saw this really, really wounded little girl. And then she said, imagine yourself as a little girl. And I closed my eyes. I kept them closed, and I was a wounded little girl. I knew my pain all too well. And the next thing was the key. She said, you now come together. We were both two little wounded kids. Mm. And that was huge, because I realized it gave me a way to look at my mother differently. And by the way, I shelved that experience. And it wasn't until years later when I made the film My Nose, and I saw the audience reaction. Everybody would stand online telling me their story. It didn't have to be about a nose, but they wait online. I would be with like 3 other filmmakers, because that was just a short, but the line formed in front of me. And then I knew what they were going to say, because everyone said the same thing. I love you, nose, don't touch it. I can't stand your mother. How do you deal with it? I'm thinking that was a short, funny film. You haven't seen anything. And 3 is, let me tell you my story, because we all have a story. And it didn't have to be about a nose. This woman opens up her coat to show me it was her weight issue. Her mother was long deceased. She attributes it to her mother. And then I realized, oh my God, so many people are in pain, and I need to figure this out. And I figured out my steps to finding forgiveness. I started workshopping them. And then I made the movie. I said to my mother, would you go on camera with me to work on our relationship? I knew if she said yes, I had a gold mine, because number one, she had become very funny in her. She's called like the geriatric shock jock. She's like the Howard Stern of her generation. She's no censor. She's the queen of the one-liners. I have this huge archive thanks to my father. He started shooting 8mm. He shot photograph. I have his World War II book. I knew if I'm going to go back and tell this story and investigate, why was my mother like this? Why is my father like this? I have to go back and tell their stories. I had all this visual stuff. I started doing my genealogy in 81. So I had interviews with my grandmother. I found audio cassettes with my grandmother. I had this wealth of material.
Wow.
And I'm a storyteller and I'm open. So I knew if she said yes, I had a gold mine, and she did say yes. And the camera started rolling. And
Oh, it's so good. It is so good
yes.
to watch. Oh, look, those memories sort of like come back to talk about it, because it was so telling as she started opening up and then shutting down and opening up and shutting down, as it sort of dawned on her, didn't it, about what she'd done.
Well, you know, it's very interesting because she, you know, she's a really good actress. You know, I always joke that my mother would be a great fiction writer, but a terrible reporter, because she does have a bit of lying, you know, to the point where she probably believes it. And I mean, she lied about her age to me for years, not to my brothers, funny enough. So I have to emphasize, it's not about the other person. A lot of people say to me, you're so lucky. You know, your mother was alive. You're so lucky. Your mother admits at the end of the movie, she just did it for the camera. She doesn't think she did anything wrong, to tell you the truth. We do the work. So the step is understand your abuser, okay? So I dug into her past and I saw her as a little child. So what gets us so upset in life is when we have unfulfilled expectations. So when we want our mother, our father, our husband, our wife, our partner, our sibling to love us because they're supposed to, and they don't, that's a problem, because then we have anger, we have resentment, we're unfulfilled. So when I did that little exercise with that woman, that was a big trigger. I shelved it because I didn't get to do my forgiveness work till a few years later. But I remembered that. And I realized, oh my God, I have to change how I look at my mother. So when she tells me I'm stupid, I lose things, which, you know, she's the one who's losing things all the time. I'm going to amount to nothing. You know, I need a nose job. That went on for years until I made a film about my nose, you know, like ridiculing me constantly. I looked at it as a wounded child. So, okay, I have not had children, but you ladies are grandparents, and I'm sure a lot of your viewers are parents or grandparents. So when your kid was a little kid and they came to you and said, hey, mommy or daddy, I don't love you anymore, what are you going to do? Smack them around? You're going to bend down. You're going to pick them up. You're going to give them love because you know that's what they need. So when your mother says to you, you're fat, you're stupid, you know, look how you look, switch it around. It's called reframing. I reframed how I looked at my mother. So I didn't look at her as my mother. I looked at her as a child who she herself needs love. If we didn't get love, how could we give love? So right? So I changed how I looked at her. So here's the big key. So I was no longer cowering or giving or unleashing. So when she said to me, I remember I couldn't find my grandmother's jewelry, and I had already done my forgiveness work. She goes, oh, you lose everything, and da-da-da-da-da. And all day long, you know, I'm calling to keep her updated, and now she just hangs up the phone on me. And so at the end of the day, I found the box with the jewelry, and I call her up. And she turned like 180 degrees, and now we're like best friends. Oh, Gail, you don't know how many times I lose things. And I'm like thinking I do. And then I said, Mom, I just want to thank you for all that love and support you gave me today. And she started laughing because she knows she was such a jerk, you know? And so how we transform others is by transforming ourselves. Exactly. So once she realized she had no impact on me.
Wow, that's big. That's big.
Huge. With her criticisms and her insults, it's like pointless. I'm going to say one last thing. I gave a workshop once, and it was men, women in the group, and there was a beautiful woman. She's an actress, ingenue, beautiful. And her father preyed upon her. She has a sister, but the sister wasn't preyed upon. And one day her sister was with her when she got a really nasty text from from her father, and she shows it to her sister, and her sister says, "Forget about him. Just look at him as a big baby in a diaper. And I thought, that's a great image. And so here's an example. The child who wasn't sensitive and didn't take it personally was not targeted. It's the one who they're going to get a reaction from. It's always the more sensitive.
Say that again. That's a very
okay.
Yes.
So
that's very important.
Okay, so it's always, so think about whoever's here listening or who will listen to this later. If you are one of how many siblings or whatever, you're in a situation. Think about who's the person that was preyed upon. I guarantee you it is going to be the most sensitive child in that family, because the predator wants to achieve results. They want to see the person squirm. They want to have impact on them. Now, if the other child just ignores them and has no impact, they're going to wait. Why are they going to bother? Right? They're not going to do it. So what I learned is how to be that child who was able to reframe not to be that super sensitive, take it personally and yell back or cower or whatever. And my whole day's ruined. My whole everything's ruined because of this. And just look at her as a child. And then you take their power away. I actually, it's like the air out of the balloon is gone. Okay. I depowered her over me. Okay. She no longer could have that effect on me. And this is so important. And this is how we learn. So everything is about managing our expectations. And then I got to a place where I looked at my mother as this child who was so wounded. And I actually was able to feel compassion for her. And I was able to forgive her. Okay. So, and we forgive for ourselves. Now, I also want to say this one thing that is so important. In fact, there's a woman who wrote a book. She interviewed baby boomer women. Baby boomer women probably have the biggest, which I am one of, I think we might all be, have the biggest issue with our mothers, because we have the biggest, it's our time period of our living. Our mothers essentially didn't have the career opportunities we had. It was rare that they went to university. They got married. My mother said, you got married and had babies. Bam, that was it. It wasn't like they weren't smart or they didn't want to have a career. They did what they had to do, what they were supposed to do. And suddenly they give birth to these daughters, and there's no question we go to universities. And suddenly they're having these careers that they couldn't have, that they were stuck at home. My girlfriend went to Wellesley, which is a really great school in America. She said out of her 10 girlfriends, 3 of their mothers committed suicide when they were in college. So they didn't have that opportunity. So there's a lot of jealousy that goes in. So anyway, yes, well, I can go on and on. So these steps, these main steps, I'm just going to do I always say, if you can create distance, create distance. Okay, so I'm sorry, I forgot to get to the point of what I wanted to say.
Fine.
Don't expect that person who hurt you, so in my case, my mother, to ever say they've done anything wrong, to ever even to acknowledge they did anything wrong and ever say they're sorry. It's like getting angry at somebody who's blind for not being able to drive a race car. They are incapable. We forgive for ourselves. We don't need that person. It's not about them. It's about us.
Okay, it's about resentment. Now, draw that back in. It's about resentment for the hurt. It's also about ruminating about the hurt.
Right.
It's also about catastrophizing as though the hurt's going to happen again.
Right.
And if I could just add my little bit in this, you said manage your feelings. But in actual fact, that management is more about observing yourself, observing how you react instead of responding, because that's the gap. Tova has this thing about on her website, there's a moment between, what is it, Tova, you tell us?
Well, it's Viktor Frankl. There's a moment between your thought and your action. And in that moment,
microsecond,
is your freedom to make the choice.
Exactly. I quote him often. because I mean, his whole book is Man's Search for Meaning, because we know no one has control over our thoughts but ourselves. This is where it all starts. Our brain sends messages to our body. You know, John Sarno, he talked about that pain people have in their back, because when we're all stressed out, we're constricting the blood flow, right? And that's creating the in the arteries and whatever, and that's creating the pain. So it's all here. This is what we have to work on, our thoughts.
And I want to add to that, the thoughts are reacting to some unconscious, which is the body, and that we still can control. We think we can't, but we can always control our response to the unconscious. And at some point, Rose has taught me a lot that ISTDP brings together the unconscious and the conscious. We become aware. And once you become aware, you have full control. And that's letting go.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And that's exactly what Gail is talking about, being aware, completely aware of our inner turmoil, if you put it that way. And also, if I could also add that often people with somatic pain, they'll have this knot in their gut. And when they actually watch the resentment and see that the resentment is a knot as well, they then can move over to seeing that child within that other person, the perpetrator. Yeah.
Exactly. So I want to add to all this, and that is one thing that is so important. And I was talking about it before we went live, is shame. People keep things in. People are afraid to share things. And when you keep secrets, I didn't come up with this, you're as sick as your secrets. When we keep it in, it turns to shame. Shame turns to pain, and pain turns to disease. Okay. So that's why it is so important. That's why I do these workshops and I go through these steps. I create these safe environments because we all have this stuff. Everybody has stuff. It doesn't matter. It's just different levels in different areas. We all have been through things. So it's how we handle it. So it's so important to let it out. So one is, creative expression. The other is to work with a group, to workshop, to find community, and have people. And you have to be selective. That's the other thing. Okay.
Well, that's another problem in itself.
Right.
Because you were fortunate enough but if you'd gone into medicine or something else, you wouldn't have had that healing that you had with the arts. You might have been artistic, but you might have actually been following your father's ideas that, you should be an accountant, for example, instead of an artist.
Right.
And then, of course, the pain would get worse, wouldn't it?
Yeah, no, I had absolutely. And I have to say, yes, my father used to say, I work, I put food on the table. You don't have to like what you do. I don't like he was a funeral director. He went into his family business.
My God.
Believe it or not, my mother wanted me to become a funeral director. She said, Kirschenbaum, you enter at the top. Funny, you end up in the bottom, right? But you know what? I had such a strong will.
Talk about one-liners.
You're right. You're right. Oh, everybody's dying to get into the business. I heard them all. It was humiliating. Imagine first grade. They go in first grade. Teacher went around the room. What does your daddy do? And I think about it. That was like really nosy. I'm writing my memoir. People have asked for it over and over, and I'm 3/4 of the way there, everyone. And it's my journey. It's my story, because in a book, you can get so much more there. And it's so funny because I have been keeping diaries since I'm so young, and I've never stopped. But yeah, I just remember that teacher going around the room. I just wrote that chapter, and I sat there so nervous, like, oh my God, everybody's going to find out what my daddy's doing. He's not a doctor. He's not a lawyer. He's not a fireman. He's not a cop. And it's like, God, it was really, yeah, right. It happened to me.
Imagine growing. I can imagine.
And French 101 in university, she asked the same thing in French.
I wonder why. Why is it so important?
I don't know. I think today they can't do that, right? It's like a privacy thing. But anyway, yes. So it is. So I started to say, I know this woman who is a therapist. And one day I was with her, and she had learned about some bad thing, some news about some medical problem. And while we were walking in the street, she saw her friend, and she ran to the car, and she came back, and she was so disappointed. I saw her face because she had shared her news about this medical problem. And she was so disappointed because of the woman's reaction. She didn't get the sympathy that she was hoping. And I said, you know what? Not everybody's good at these things. Like, everybody's good. And I'm like the friend you come to when you need emotional support, because I am all empathy. I'm all ET, emotional intelligence. But if you need, about investments, forget it, or you're going to move and you need boxes schlepped, I am like, that's not me. So when we find community for this stuff, you have to be selective. Don't get angry at people when if you want to share and they don't respond because they're not capable. You have to find the right people. That's why I have this community and I do these workshops, and we roll up our sleeves and we get the work done because we're all in it together, and we want to do it.
Really?
Yeah.
Tell us more now about the workshop.
Okay, so it is. So I just did
I'd like to say, I'd like to just say, I don't know your workshop. It's probably phenomenal, but I imagine it doesn't end there. It's a journey. It just helps people along the journey, and
it starts them off. Yes.
Right. Okay.
I mean, that's what all of these works are about.
Right.
Even when you go to therapy, you know what's going on. You know that the perpetrator, for example, has their own problems. And it's about releasing that sensitivity and responding.
Right.
And the same goes for all of these things. And this workshop, you can't cure a person or whatever, a situation in 8 hours, because it's a process,
right.
as Tova said. It
right.
it opens your vision to another way of looking. Or
right.
as one lecturer said, people present their lives from the parlor. I think that's how she put it. But she said, go around to the back door and go into the back door and see how it works in the kitchen. And then we'll know what your life is really like, not
right.
from the parlor.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So yes, this is so I just did a class at Omega. I was supposed to do, and hopefully down the road, I'll do an in-person one where it's 3 days. We really can work, but it was a 90-minute virtual. And so this one that I'm doing now is a 10 to 4 virtual workshop. It's 10 to 4 Eastern Standard Time, so it's New York time. And we are going to work through, I keep it a small selected, I only have 3 spots left. It's a very safe and private space. And so we workshop, I give people the tools. We do everything from meditations to the steps. And I have many steps that we go through. And then also, it's so funny. I've been doing these workshops for a long time. So I had Zoom before COVID. So I love how Zoom is now like it's a verb. So we do breakout sessions. And at the end, you will leave with tools and steps. And depending on how things go, we might have a support group thereafter that will meet twice a month. So it depends on how that group, so we can keep continuing it, because you're gonna make headway. Light bulb moments will go. You have to do the work. I'm gonna guide you. It's so funny. I was just watching Tony Robbins did a thing. I will do interventions and work with you, and I will give you the tools, but you have to keep working. So if we have interest, we're going to probably start a support group coming out of that. And then deep dive, I'm probably going to do one about creativity, because as you pointed out so nicely, Rose, I don't have that pension I'm retiring on, because I never became the teacher my mother wanted me to and go work in the school system. But I always was creatively fulfilled. And my mission with my creativity, since I left TV, where I was a hired gun, my work that I create on my own is always about helping other people. Wow. So, and also I'm a photographer. So I went back to photography. So everything I do is to inspire and help others. So yes, that's kind of it in a nutshell. So I'm going to give you a lot of information, but you're going to have a lot of time. That's why I keep it small, so everybody can do a deep dive and work. And we have breaks, so don't worry. You know, we're going to break, so we're not glued nonstop to the computer.
Could I ask you about people who give up? Because we were talking a few moments ago about this being an introductory idea, that forgiveness happens all over the place. And as we notice when we're unforgiving or we're resentful. But tell me how you would talk to someone who's giving up on themselves.
Okay, so the most important thing, and I have heard this before from somebody else, is when we are feeling really down, take your mind off of yourself and go help somebody else. That is the best.
It's the best distraction that usually works for you, because go with it, because it's a distraction, and yet it's chemical. It's a chemical reaction that I'm helping. I'm so needy. I'm so needy that I'm helping someone else to help me with my neediness.
When my dog was alive, she became a therapy dog. And we worked in different populations. And in the end, we worked in a hospice center. And I have to tell you, I got so much out of it. I mean, I saw what she was doing to the patients and the family members, but I left there. And no matter what, I felt so much better. Give to somebody else. Take your mind off of yourself, because when you give to somebody else, when you are sensitive to somebody else's pain or need, you get a lot back. It feeds your soul.
Yeah.
What can I ask why you never got another dog? Is that?
Oh, I thought you were going to say why I didn't have a nose job.
No, never. Never.
So funny. Well, because I travel a lot, and when I had Chelsea, we were in LA, and she went everywhere with me in what's called a Sherpa bag. The woman who made the Sherpa bags ended up on my board, so I had every Sherpa bag there was. But because of when I moved back to New York, there was a couple here that were like her second parents. So when I was away, they were always helping. I guess because of my traveling quite a bit, and I am away a lot. And now, for those who either will watch my film or watch my film, so my mother, for those who will watch it or have watched it, and it's available on a lot of platforms. It's on Amazon, depending on where you are, Amazon Prime or Canopy for libraries and whatever, a lot of places, Vimeo on demand. But my mom is 98 now. And she's kind of a freak because she's doing great. Her mind is as sharp as ever. So I spend a lot of time with her in Florida. I'm essentially her caregiver. Is this crazy, everybody? I left her at 16, and in my 60s, I'm back with her. I mean, right now I'm in New York. But, how life is like a full cycle. And now she's the child, and I'm kind of the mother, caring and doing a lot of things for her.
I smell a movie coming about this sequel.
Well, everybody's been asking for the sequel. The book is going to come out first. But I have cameras in that house. You know what these Ring cameras are? They're like nanny cams, because, she lives alone in Florida. And she broke her shoulder when she was with my brother. I was in Europe right before COVID. And then she allowed me to get the cameras in because I wanted them. So, I can watch the reality show. I watch my mother, but it's very good. And I could do ads for that camera. It's called Ring. You could talk to the person through there. So when I saw her on the ground next to her bed, and then she ended up in the ER, not COVID, she had something else. I lived there for a year, and I took over her care. But, about the sequel. So I download this footage from the camera. So I think the sequel is going to have a lot of the surveillance camera footage.
Oh, excellent. I wondered how you were going to do the filming when you're in New York and she's in Florida, but obviously you've got it all there, just like your father. I mean, that is amazing.
Download it, or I can aim a camera myself or whatever. Yeah. I mean, now with the iPhone, I mean, all my photography, I have this fine art photography career. It's no one could believe I use the phone. I mean, it's incredible what you could do with it.
I also want to make a point about, you know, we're talking about very serious things. And, you know, I love the humor and the paradox of the sad and funny, and the funny and sad, because it's all chemical and it's all healing, and it's all important to understand like what's really sad and to move into the funny when you're ready, because I think we move into the funny to stop the sadness. But yeah. What I want to say about that is oh, I had a really good point to say about the funny and the sad, but
it's
anyway,
run away on you.
Yeah, the funny and the sad. So I think it's important to oh, I had something really wonderful to say about funny and sad. Well, you know, because my first book that I ever read before I was in chiropractic school was Norman Cousins, about laughing. And
I was just gonna say, yes.
And what's important too is we had a guest a few weeks ago. It was a turning point for Rose and I. We'll have her back, Dr. Bethany Rains, and she has met some of the guys from the Curable app, and just by coincidence. And Rose found her, and she's an amazing woman, and she did a podcast, and it is so true, and I'm now using it in all my work. Pain is an emotion, and pain is exhibited in our body like an emotion. And the first thing a patient will say is, well, I don't feel angry. Like they try to make it like, no, it's not, but it's exactly right on. You know, these emotions.
That's the unconscious talking.
Yeah. And I think that's why I keep wanting to talk about the forgiveness and the compassion. This is a chemical reaction in my body. And if I know that I make a joke when I'm feeling sad, it's just important that I know that. I'm allowed to come out of my sadness whenever I want. But the awareness that I've learned over the years working with Rose, and the awareness of our patterns, is the freedom of the healing.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah, that is the freedom, knowing that this is my reactive part of me coming up, as though I was still 5 years old.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Right. So acknowledging it, and also forgiving ourselves. That's so important.
That's what I want to say.
Yes.
So, excuse me for interrupting. So many times society and our parenting, and it's very big, forgive them, forgive them, forgive them. And what happens? Bump up against the wall. We didn't forgive ourselves.
Right.
So important.
Right. Well, you know, when we are hurt and we have abuse, it doesn't make for a happy person, right? And so when we're not a happy person, we could do nasty things. I mean, if you watch my film, I unleash at my mother, and I say to her, I had the best teacher. You know, you taught me. I learned. Thank you. And when I realized my tongue was as sharp, if not sharper, than my mother, and I could bring her to tears, I knew I had to change. I knew I didn't like the human being I had become, right? That I had learned these tactics. And so you have to forgive yourself, right? When you're bringing hurt to somebody else. Hurt people, hurt people, hurt people.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is a very important point.
Yeah. Could I just add in about guilt as well? Because undoing the guilt is what Gail is actually talking about. And it's undoing the guilt for something that you couldn't do anything about. Because if you think about the child that was frightened, that frightened child is guilty for feeling anger. And as Tova said before, people will say, well, I'm not angry. And, you know, people will say, I prided myself in never being angry. But in actual fact, they're full of rage.
Yeah.
Because the pressure cooker was pressed down, the anger was repressed, and the rage came out. And that's what Gail's talking about, this rageful experience of talking back to people or snapping at them or belittling them is about the rage being coming out like a pressure cooker because they believe that they're not going to be angry. Whereas anger is a beautiful system that protects us. But when it's repressed, it becomes rage and it becomes something that we become ashamed of.
And pain. It makes us sick. But you said guilt, since we want to laugh. My mother, I always say, she was a travel agent for guilt. She had owned a travel agency, a travel agent for guilt trips.
Unbelievable. And I think there are thousands and thousands of Jewish girls, Catholic girls, Palestinian. There was a Palestinian woman who said, I'm Palestinian. I'm going through the same thing. Right. It doesn't matter. We are women. And I noticed something about mothers and daughters, because I have, 2 amazing daughters, and one daughter has 2 daughters. And I'm like, and my grandmother, may she rest in peace, said, don't have girls. They're stupid. Don't have girls. And I had 3 brothers, and I was the only girl. I'm like, they're stupid. They're weak. So here I had 2 girls. But the point is, I think there's some kind of jealousy thing.
Big time.
Like competition.
Yes. Actually, Gail mentioned that earlier on.
Yes.
And when she was talking about the dresses and she getting the skin condition, and she mentioned that the mother had to dress the child in a certain way because it was a reflection on the fashionable mother.
Right.
So, that's another interplay that we do. And the same thing goes for boys and dads. Mm-hmm. Dad wants the boy to be an accountant, for example, but the boy actually wants to be an artist. And there's this inner conflict going on then, and they never please the father, or, vice versa, they never please the mother. So it's like this guilt in us then that simmers away. And then, especially when we're with the people the perpetrators, we're going to lash out. We're going to spit back virtually. And knowing what's going on in us, we don't need to. We can feel compassion for that person. Or, as Gail said, find our own community so that we've got someone who understands us. Yeah. I mean,
that's so important. We need a support system, which can include animals, include the meditation, include a spiritual group, whatever. We need, I mean, think about all the brilliant leaders in the world. They have teams of people, right? So we need teams, we need support. It's very hard to do it yourself. But it's those expectations of, I'm not going to bring this up. It's a very famous person who had a son, and I'm not going to go there, but that pressure.
Oh, you've just gone there.
Should I bring it out? I don't want to do politics, but I read a book before about Fred Trump Sr., and his first son was his namesake, Fred Jr. And before Fred Jr. was born, it was like his whole life was planned for him. He was going to take over the real estate empire, right? But Fred didn't come out like that. Fred loved aviation, and he loved planes, and he got his pilot's license, and he was, a more sensitive kind of guy, and he became a pilot. He got his own little plane, and he became a pilot. And that wasn't, his father said, no son of mine's going to be a bus driver in the sky. And so he was bullied so much that he to the point that he left his passion, his career, and worked for his father, and the rest is history. He ended up dead.
Oh, wow. That's a really interesting story.
That he got some job, crappy job working for his father. And then he went, he was drinking, and then, he didn't have a very long life. It's a really tragic story. I know a lot of people before they're born, their life is already prepared for them, right?
So what's the then it's a whole nother show about, what's the purpose of us having a child and our expectations and how hard it is to be a parent, and you have learned, short of you having a child, you've learned so much through your own experience, and don't ever underestimate, what an amazing friend and parent and partner you've been to people. And, like Sesame Street says, there's all kinds of families, because I was a single mother and I was like, I don't want to be different, but basically there's all kinds of families, and you've created a family, you've created a community, you've created enormous help and healing. And this show has really been wonderful. I wasn't sure how it was going to turn out, but I'm really excited to have you back. And it's a wonderful show of healing. It's really bringing together Rose and mine's work with your work. It's really showing the power of healing is like the doctor is in you, the therapist is in you. And I'm going to, promote it a little bit more with your workshop. And maybe when you have another workshop again, we can, we could call it anything. We could just call it love. We could call it forgiveness. We could call it, accepting. It's just, forgiveness is a wonderful, like this woman who wrote a book on self-compassion, The Science of Self-Compassion. You can just plug in forgiveness.
Yeah. Because
it all has to do with love and acceptance and patience and understanding and like what I call falling down and getting up and falling down and get up. People say, how are you, doc? And I'm like, falling down and getting up, falling down and getting up, falling down and getting up.
Could I just give a plug for
falling down and getting up?
No, sorry about that.
That's okay.
We're having Dr. Deborah Pollack coming on, I think in April.
March.
I'm not sure, or maybe March, is it? And she's going to talk about ambivalence, about being a parent. Ambivalence about being a parent.
Yeah.
Yes. So I think going on Gail's story just now and us recognizing that her mother's ambivalence about having the daughter, and the daughter needed to reflect the values that the mother was trying to produce, which was having a straight nose, for example. So we've got an ambivalence when we get pregnant, and that ambivalence could well be that I won't be a good enough mother, or that the child won't be good enough and won't reflect my things. So just to add to this story, because it's what's that everlasting story now? What's it called? A never-ending story. That's that's how it is with human beings, that we try and reproduce our maybe our own values on the child, but the child doesn't cooperate. And that's what Gail was saying about being baby boomers, that we were different to our mothers and our fathers.
So
and
true.
They also grew up in a period of war, persecution, depression. etc. And they went from having a lamp to having electricity, for example, in their lifetime. We don't know that, but they did.
I need to send something to you. My mother wrote, I had it published. She put it on the, ever since COVID, we have like a family thread. I'm sure a lot of people do that now to stay in touch with your family. And she wrote something called I Believe in Science. And because she's 98, everybody, she's lived a long time. And it's so poignant because she goes back in time. It's what, something happened that was invented. I believe in science, the polio vaccine, I believe in science, whatever happened. And it's very, very poignant when you've lived that long. But I also think it is so important when people are being raised, what is the time and culture and where are they living? Because that affects their dynamics when they become a parent, right? That whole environment, not just their own childhood. And I think they say trauma passes on 7 generations, right? And that even when you're just a fetus growing in your mother's belly, whatever trauma is going on with her, you are actually experiencing.
Well, you also have your grandmother's eggs. We learned this from this is biological. You have your grandmother's eggs, things like that.
No, it's a lot. Yeah. But so then if you put it against what's going on at the time that person is a mother, okay? As I said, that's why the baby boomer women and our mothers, it was a huge gap. That was a huge generation gap, okay? So the jealousy, the conflict, a lot, as you just sort of gave the whole list of the war, the second war, the depression, you name it. So there's a lot that goes into it. Yeah. And I just want to say I didn't expect not to be a mother. I didn't expect you know, obviously, if I really wanted to be a mother, I know plenty of people that went and did it on their own. You know, either they bought the sperm or they adopted. And I was still kind of thinking I'll do it, you know, find the guy. And it didn't happen. But I have to thank, I'm going to cry. Everybody, because when I speak, when I screen my film, when I get on a stage and I see the reaction and I get the emails and I get the applause, I get the love. I get that love.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Beautiful.
I want to say one thing, because Sidney Poitier died very recently.
Yeah.
And in the 90s, I lived in Los Angeles. This was when I was a TV producer, and I got involved with a nonprofit. And it was like a mentor program. You're matched with a student when they're in 7th grade, and you mentor them through high school. And because it's LA, they have a big celebrity fundraiser. And so and every year they have celebrities on the stage, and they ask one mentor and mentee to speak. And this particular year, they asked me to speak and my mentee, and my knee-jerk reaction was, no. I mean, I've never spoken in front of a crowd or whatever. I think there were 1,000 people. It was huge. It was a luncheon. But I wouldn't be a very good mentor if I said no. So I said yes. And we worked on our speech all week. And by the time it came, I felt confident. And there were celebrities on stage. Jackson Brown performed. This is a long time ago. The audience was filled, as I said, with celebrities. So it came for time for Rosa and I to speak. And we kind of went back and forth. And then I just remember, this is so funny. I guess being in America, if you were my age, you remember there was a commercial when E.F. Hutton speaks, everyone listens. I felt like, oh my God, we are speaking and you can hear a pin drop. We got a standing ovation. And that standing ovation gave me an adrenaline rush I never had before, I never had after. And when we got off the stage, I remember we had to go through the front. Everyone had just sat down, right? Because they were at tables. It was a luncheon. And there was Sidney Poitier. Now, I had just gotten all this love. That's what I want to say about what love does to us. I had a room of people giving me love. And I felt this power. And there's Sidney as I'm walking by, and I always thought he's like an angel. And I bent down, and I just, with all that love, and I gave him this huge hug, and I said, I am such a fan of yours. And he looked up at me, and he goes, I'm such a fan of yours. And I went back to my table, and the LA Times was there, and they're like, you should take the show on the road. I didn't speak for years after that. But the reason I'm even saying that is I think that's a place I get a lot of love. That when I decided to do my own work and reveal my own story, and I want to encourage everyone here, when you're authentic, when you share, when you open up to other people, people will relate to you and you will get the love. You won't be shamed. How many people do we know, or celebrities, revealed a disease or came out they're gay or whatever, and they didn't get the shame, they got the love. So
wow,
we could put out being who we are. We're going to get the love. So don't be afraid.
Beautiful. Yeah. Thank you so much. Could you please write this down? Could you please send me on the messenger? I forgot all about the other movies. I want to post the trailer about the dog, about Chelsea.
Oh, yes. Okay.
I want to honor Chelsea.
Oh,
I totally forgot about the nose.
Okay.
I want to just promote the trailers and with the link to where, and I want to do it also on my Hebrew page, because I want people to the nose, the dog,
and then
about mom going strong at 98,
right?
And really, I'm really inspired. Thank you.
So whoever, anyone who's taking the workshop, they will get links to Look at Us Now, Mother, the movie. And then I've done a lot of research of people's personal stories, and they're pretty known people. So some of them are known, some are not. So they're going to get links to that to watch these little videos, and then they're going to get a lot of information.
And you've been very kind to say on the launch page that there are scholarships.
Yes, so I have a partial scholarship available, absolutely. But as I said, we only have 3 spots left. So hopefully,
but you'll do another one anyway. So anyone, anyone who wants to do it, sign up.
Just contact me. Even if you wanted, let's say you want to do it and you can't do it that day, just reach out to me, because I'll save your information and then do it, because I am all about service. All I want to do is help people, because you know, when you figured something out and you feel like you're free and you've been able to. I mean, my mother's my best friend now. It's unbelievable. No one believes I even talked to her. Honestly, even if you when you watch my film and people are horrified, I made it abuse light. I pulled things out of there and I didn't put things in there because I didn't want my audience to sit there and slit their wrist. And I didn't make the movie to vilify my mother. I made the movie to help people. That's the only reason. So people who witnessed what happened, and believe me, neighbors saw things they cannot believe I even talked to her. So, and again, I am not telling other people that you have to reconcile. I did, but you have to free yourself.
Wow. Yeah. It's about personal freedom. It's not about reconciling with anyone. And you know, I think that we should actually look at that word forgiveness, and it's about giving to yourself.
Right. Give is the root, right? Give is the root of forgiveness.
Yes.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's all about giving. You give to yourself.
Beautiful. There's even a chapter in the Presence Process about forgiveness. I think it's one of the chapters. It's just a profound, and so happy that you're bringing it to the table.
I want to say one thing very quickly. Yeah. So because of my film and because I worked in entertainment, I've met many celebrities, and due to the film, I didn't meet the celebrities, but they've watched it and they've tweeted out and used my handle. So then they say, thank you, GL Kirschenbaum, just so look at his now mother. It helped me tremendously. Everyone must see it. And then of course I Google them and I read about their childhood. So I want to say this. And then there's a celebrity who fell in love with the movie. And so she had people over and had me there in Beverly Hills. So it doesn't matter if you're rich. It doesn't matter if you're famous. That doesn't mean you're going to be happy. There's a lot of rich people. There are a lot of famous people that we all know that aren't happy. You have to release that resentment. You have to release that anger if you want to achieve happiness. Yes. And that is my mission, to help people get there.
And release can be accept, it can be love, it can be forgive, it can be release. Doesn't have to be get away from. It's right, Rose. It's more like an embracing, owning, honoring, integrating.
Yeah, the fact that you've been hurt, and that the normal reaction to being hurt is being angry.
Yeah.
But when we don't acknowledge that, we don't have to share that again. Just like forgiveness, we don't have to share that. We have to actually feel that depth in ourselves. The same with anger. We have to feel the anger within ourselves, not discharge it, just feel it, that I've been hurt in whatever way. And whether or not they meant it or not is irrelevant. The pain is in us and we can actually acknowledge it. And that's that insight that this is going on in me. So Gail, thank you so much. It's been so lovely having you back, and all the very, very best with your workshop. And you'll keep in touch with us anyway, I hope.
Yeah.
And all the best with your mother. And also, Gail, remember, she's coming to that stage now that you're going to lose her, aren't you?
Oh, I live, can I just say, and now I'll cry again.
Yeah.
I say this to the world. I said it to her, that I used to wish that plane would crash when I was a child and she was on it, because if that plane crashed and she died, I would be free. And now I live in fear of her not being in my life.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's huge.
That's important.
Yeah.
That's very important. And that's that cycle. That's why I brought it up, because it's the cycle that person who was the perpetrator now has got a relationship that has blossomed, and and just to honor that. Yeah,
I want to thank both of you for doing this work and what you're doing to help so many people. I mean, you two are a gift, that you're so dedicated and committed, and the effort it takes to do this. I mean, this is a job, and
we're amateurs.
Yeah, and it's all volunteer, but
yes, this is not, you know,
this is my therapy. Thank you for the session tonight.
Yeah, you know what? We help each other. And that's what's so important. This is like a support group we're in today, right? And other people are there with us. You know, it's like we come here and we help each other. That's what it's all about. We're like-minded. We want to grow and open and learn, and we need to listen to others. And that's the other thing, to be a good listener. It's so important.
Well, in a couple of years, we're going to have a big retreat. I'm going to meet Rose face to face. We'll have you, and we'll have a big retreat at the Dead Sea. And we'll soak in the Dead Sea, and we'll take in the sun, and we'll pray for whatever we need, and it'll all
too hot for me.
Anyway, so
too hot to handle.
Well, we're going to meet again. This threesome's going to meet again.
Okay, that sounds good. We'll go to Iceland. I did just go to Iceland, by the way.
Iceland, fine. Whatever you want to go. All the best. Bye, dear.
Okay. Bye, everybody. Thank you.